What happens when someone questions your decision in your system? Not because it was wrong, but because they think it was created purely by AI. It's a trust issue, and it's one that's becoming much more common. AI is everywhere now, and whether it's writing summaries, generating dashboards, or it's quietly built into your little tools, it's already part of how management systems are operating. But that doesn't mean that it's risk-free or that it belongs everywhere. So, how do you use AI intentionally and in a way that supports your system and doesn't compromise it? Welcome to Lead the Standard. Hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Lead the Standard, where we're going to explore some practical ways to lead, audit smart, and make ISO work well in the real world. I am Kelly Taylor and am here, as always, with a thoughtful and insightful Jackie Stapleton. Hi, Jackie.
Hello, Kelly. Yes, I'm here.
She's here. Because this would have been really awkward to do on my own today. I would have had to get some sort of bot in to pretend to be you, and then that would have been a really interesting conversation.
Clone Jackie.
Oh my God, imagine. That's a whole other topic.
Oh, yeah. Don't tell my husband.
No. This week we are talking about something that is creeping a little bit more into systems than most of us realize, and that is AI, whether that be cloning or the like. I suppose we are cloning in a way, aren't we? Now, whether it's built into the tools that we're already using, like your reporting platforms, CRMs, learning systems, or something that you're actively experimenting with, AI is showing up in the systems whether we are ready or not. But the question we're going to talk about today isn't, are you using AI? Because 90% of us are. The other 10% are probably using it, but not aware that they're using it. Today, the question is, do you know where and how AI is influencing your system? And what are you doing to manage it? So we've got a fantastic story that sparked today's conversation. I won't dive into it too much, but let's just say we had a student who thought that our teams were robots, prompted by more robots. And I know a few of us actually felt really frustrated trying to convince them we're not robots. We use lots of tools and had limited success. So, Jackie, would you like to elaborate a little bit more on exactly what happened here?
Yeah. So there was two things that prompted this conversation. And I'll finish on the one that you just mentioned. But as you know, I'll cover this initially. We've just introduced a section in our online training that has an audio clip, and it's actually two people. It's like a podcast. Hey, two people having a conversation, Kelly. That's a podcast. Um, and video clips. And yes, I know if you've done our courses, you already know that there's videos with real people smattered throughout our training anyway. However, of course, that's very challenging and time consuming to maintain, particularly for our external SMEs. So, I'm here every day, so it's much easier for me. But now that we've got more courses, our SMEs have their own businesses. It's much harder to get them in one spot to record some videos. So we came up with the idea of using Notebook LM. And, it was something that I'd been playing with and having fun with myself. And actually, Angus, who does all our video editing, he's at uni, he uses it for uni for any lectures that he might miss. He uploads the notes and he can listen. And he has shared with us his favorite is listening to the audio, because it's two people just having a chat about that content. So we've started embedding it in our training. So the first one with it fully will be our 45,003 course, which is due out any day. But you'll see we sort of have a little bit of a note in our training that saying that Atoll embraces AI and large language models, etc. And here's just a different way of learning. And I think we got something in there that says, look, this doesn't replace everything, it's just there to enhance. And we're open and honest that we've had Notebook LM create this for us. Okay, so that was the first thing I thought, that's really cool. But then, of course, around a similar time, we all had this experience where it was a different an AI experience of a different kind, you could say. We had a student contact us, and he was really unhappy with the feedback in his assessment workbook. And he was convinced that the marking had been done by AI and was insisting on speaking to a human. And I think he even thought that our customer service team, they weren't real people as well. Like he'd sort of, yeah, he'd lost trust essentially. So the funny thing about this was is that I'd actually marked this workbook, and every single word in there was mine. Like, and Kelly, you do the marking as well.
Yeah.
And this is a very in-person marking process that we follow. Yes, there would be tools out there that we could use to pump these workbooks into and mark automatically. And who knows, we might do that in the future. But right at this current moment, it is marked by a human and the words are written by us. So I thought the only way to sort this out was to have a Zoom call with him. So I was I
Even
was
that was
thinking,
booking, that was a difficulty.
well, that was a bit difficult, but and he was sort of giving some pushback initially, but when I convinced him that every single word in that workbook, it was me. It was me. Like I was actually having a laugh about it and saying, no, it was me. I wrote everything in there. Let's go through it together. I know exactly the feedback that I gave. And so he was fine, obviously, by the end of it and understood what was going on. But it made me think that from our perspective, we need to be really conscious of this and I suppose understand that some people do have some trust issues around, businesses using AI, and particularly in this one-on-one sort of feedback side of things.
Yeah,
We as a business need to be aware of that and ensure that we communicate, just like we did with Notebook LM in our course material, our course content. We're open and honest and says, this is generated by Notebook LM. It's not by us as humans. It started making me think, do we have to start letting people know? And I know creatives talk about this with book writing. You can actually get a tag now that this book was written by a human. Do we actually have to do that with our marking and say this, even though our names are in the assessment workbook? Again, if it was AI, well, we just tell it to put our names in. And really, Kelly, if we were using AI, you or I would be checking it anyway,
absolutely.
which leads us into sort of where I ended up going with this topic. But before I start moving into that, do you have anything to add? Because
Well, I think
I
that
just feel
last
like
point.
you're standing there like going, oh, give me a go, give me a go.
No, and it was a really interesting experience. And that last comment that you made there about, yeah, even if we used AI, we could tell it that it's human. And that was the challenge that we had with this person, was that they were talking to the chatbot, which we acknowledge is an AI-based chatbot, then referred him to the real humans, and the real humans couldn't convince him that they were real humans. And then I even sent an email and included a video, and I made sure I had my voice and my face on the screen. And even with that video working through Jackie's feedback, he wasn't convinced that I was real. And that was our frustration. But also, without disclosing where he works, they do really embrace AI, and but they also have a lot of cybersecurity kind of stuff. So he's right across it. So he would be dealing with deep fakes and all of those sorts of things every day. I mean, in hindsight, I'm kind of flattered that he thought that we were that we were that advanced, or were we a little bit backwards? So yeah, but you also mentioned there disclosing. So that's something that
Mhm.
we are really trying to be very open and transparent with. Even images in our content that are generated by AI. I've now got the marketing team or the content team putting in the comment or in the alt tag image generated by AI, so that we are open and transparent. And I know we'll get into this, but also this is a two-way street. We also get a lot of student submissions that are very clearly AI, and
We
AI.
haven't had them for quite some time, but we had a lot there at one stage,
Yeah,
didn't we?
and we're not stupid. We can pick it up, and if we will call it out, but and we'll have a conversation and we'll talk you through it. But yeah, we'll get into that more as we talk through. But it does work both ways. So I think, like anything, being open and transparent, and as you said there, setting boundaries is what maintains the trust. So I'm going to hand back over to you for this conversation, and I will jump in as we go.
Yep. And I'm sure we'll cover this. And, I want to reinforce that Kelly and I, and actually all of the team at Atoll, we're very much in support of these tools, but obviously as something to assist us.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's sort of where we're sort of going with the three areas that I covered here: monitor, trust, integrate boundaries, and assess risk. So we'll explain it as we work through it. So as I said, AI is finding its way into almost every workplace tool, and you said it before, Kelly. You may be using it and you don't even realize it because it's within the systems and platforms that we're using anyway. So, in our world, it might be automated reporting dashboards, as simple as that. You know, there's AI summaries on social media now. I actually have started using them recently because I find it saves me so much time to see, well, what are people talking about? Even within our CRM, we have a AI summary of the previous activity and emails. Again, it saves so much time than, scrolling through all the emails and figuring it out yourself. But it's embedded in what we use. And of course, you mentioned chatbots as well. So we have both, like we've got our AI, what's it called, Alto,
yeah,
on our website. So that is AI, but you can also speak to a human, obviously. So that means it's also creeping into our management systems. So, if you're here as an ISO management systems professional, you will be seeing it already in your management systems platforms or the tools that you're using. So it's whether one, you've planned on it or not, or two, you know it or not, but it's there. So as part of this development or thinking with regards to AI in the tools that we're using, and particularly in management systems, I came up with the AIM pyramid. So it's a simple way to make sure that you're not just using AI just for the sake of it, but doing it in a way that manages the risks, sets some boundaries, as you said, Kelly, and it builds trust as well. So we'll break those three down, do you think?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Before you do, we'll probably do this 1,000 times, but again, I want to emphasize there that you used the words. It's a tool to assist. It's not a tool to do, it's a tool to assist, and it will always need the human element. So we'll probably say that about 1,000 times, but I don't think
Yes.
we say it enough.
Absolutely. Okay. So the first one at the bottom level of the pyramid is assess the risks. So before you let AI into your system, if you can control that, you need to ask yourself, and even if you know it has been introduced into existing platforms, you need to ask yourself what could go wrong. So could it produce inaccurate or biased data? That's important. Could it leak confidential information? So, that you need to ensure that information security and confidentiality. And also, could people misinterpret what it's there for, why it's being used? You know, could it supersede what they're doing? So they're just some of the risks that you might want to consider. So as an example, in the Lead the Standard newsletter, I said something about, imagine that you're using AI and you're using it to generate draft internal audit checklists. That's easily done, isn't it, Kelly? You pop in, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, there'd be platforms that already do it just like that. But even if you're doing using like a separate tool, you could just pop in the procedures, the context, the criteria and scope, and say, hey, generate my audit checklist. Okay, absolutely helpful, saves a lot of time. But what if it pulls irrelevant clauses out, or it skips a clause even, or a section, or something that's quite high risk? So without assessing that risk, you're opening a gap in your audit process. So it goes along the lines with what Kelly and I are saying about it's a tool to assist. This, absolutely use it, but this is your foundation. It's doing the heavy lifting for you, but you need to then use your experience and knowledge to review and check that, okay, to ensure everything's been included. So that's absolutely a risk. So if you don't understand the risks, the rest of the system, like, it can't stand on its own. It's, as I said, it's a tool. Use it to do the heavy lifting, but you need to consider what are the risks here by using it. It's honestly, it's exactly the same as what we do with anything within our management systems. This is where we assess the risk. What has the potential to happen, and then, as per clause 6.1, actions to address risks and opportunities, you'll just add it in there. Well, how are we managing this?
Yeah. And I think, again, that's really important. The risk there is based on the user's knowledge, skills, and experience. Because if you ask an intern who has no idea about the standard, who has no idea about the processes, and say, can you get our AI bot of choice to create an internal audit, and ask it or give it the objective, the scope, and the criteria, and get it to go. If they type in, here's our objective, here's our scope, here's our criteria, can you create an internal audit checklist? That's their prompt. They are going to get something that, as you said, it's going to have all of those potential gaps. It's likely to miss key clauses, etc. But if you, as an auditor with experience, knowing what those risk areas are, and you include that information in your prompt, you're slightly, I'll use that word, slightly minimizing your risk and getting better quality information. So the tool is only as good as the information that it's provided. And if you're
Yes.
not giving a sufficient prompt and sufficient information and guidance, you're not going to get relevant outputs. So again, the risk is not just the system, it is also the user. So making sure that if you are integrating this into your business, don't assume that everybody knows how to use it. Give them some training, some instructions, and some guidance around how to use those things to make sure that that risk is reduced. It won't be eliminated, but again, reducing that risk.
Yes, absolutely. And that story sort of reminds me, I was at a auditor workshop in July, and they're fun.
She actually meant that. She was legitimate about that. She's pretending that it wasn't. She loves it.
Yeah,
Nerds out.
totally. And there was someone there that said, if you're using AI to help you to generate your audit reports, well, obviously, and confidentiality, we understand that, but your executive summary or something like that. This gentleman made the comment that, oh, it just spits out absolute rubbish. You just can't use it. And I said, hold on a second. Like, he used a stronger word than rubbish. But I said, rubbish out means rubbish in. Exactly what you said, Kelly, is, yes, you pop the information in there, but you've got to use your experience and your knowledge and some context to help to generate stuff that's not rubbish, something that's valuable. So it does go back to the user. And I like what you said. If you've assessed the risks, and one of the risks you've identified is, say, rubbish out, well, then some training, or the business sets up some, say, if you're using ChatGPT, some personalized GPTs that do certain jobs, because then you've got all of the prompts embedded in it. So Kelly's already fixing things. She's already identified, the risks, but these are controls that you need to put in place to manage the risks once you've identified them.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest gap that people have, or the biggest fear. They either trust it too much,
Yep.
or they don't know how to use it. And I was recently at a Vet QI summit, which is for RTOs in Queensland, and they had a whole session on this, because pretty much the story we told earlier, in reverse, about students marking and the tools, and giving them guidance, etc. And their same thing was like, you can use those tools, give them parameters, but also make sure that you are providing that FAQ, or you are giving them simple steps, like the plan, well, essentially what you've just created there, that planning and the review, and treat it no differently to a person that is uneducated in the role,
Yes,
essentially, is what
absolutely.
I was saying.
Yeah,
But
that's a
also
good point.
check their work.
Yeah. Yeah, as we said, it's a tool. It still needs someone with the knowledge to check it. So that's a good segue to the
It is.
second part and the middle part of the pyramid, which is integrate with boundaries. So once you know the risks, so we've identified some risks, decide where these AI tools fit in, or where they don't fit in. Decide where AI can actually just support as a tool, or there might be instances where it can replace some I suppose, tasks. Okay, so there's different levels, I guess. So we used the example earlier on, Kelly, with Notebook LM, and we're embedding the audio file. So two people having a chat, it is like a podcast, and a video file. So we made a decision to integrate that into our courses, because it's much less time consuming than having an SME talk about every single clause, and record videos and have someone edit the videos. Doesn't mean we won't still do that as something to supplement the training, but you can see how the time frame to give our students some sort of different tool to address people that learn differently, because otherwise it's just all reading, and might be some models or charts or graphs, some interaction, but some people would rather listen, some people would rather watch. So I suppose it expedites the process of getting this mix of content in our courses. So we've made that decision, but as we discussed earlier, we've got like a opening paragraph which explains that it is AI generated. Use the tool, but it's not the entire training. It's just a different way of learning, essentially.
I think the really important boundary to acknowledge that we set here is that we didn't just say, here's the clause, create your stuff. We said, here's our content for this course, create the stuff. It
Correct.
created it. And then we still had our SME review it. But the good thing is with the AI stuff, we can do it in 2 speed, 3 speed, whatever, depends on how
True.
quickly you can listen. The content's generated in minutes, not hours or weeks sometimes. And then we can review it, make sure it's out there for a starting point. But again, we set that initial boundary straight off. We'll only use
Yes.
our content so that we're not creating conflicting messages.
Yes. Yes. That's right. And I suppose you're right. This is about boundaries. And I think I said something about, so like that's us here at Atoll. I use that as an example. But say if it's in a quality management system and you've got customer complaints have come in, you might use an AI tool to summarize customer complaints or categorize your customer complaints. But that's the boundary. The next task or role or responsibility is that a human needs to review that and decide which issues escalate to a non-conformance and require a corrective action. You could actually get the AI tool to suggest or recommend what becomes a non-conformance and maybe even rate it or assess it, but it still needs to, that's the boundary. That's what you decided is going to happen. And then the next part of that process is, okay, we need, Kelly or someone to review them and ensure that, yeah, that you agree, or you might change something slightly. But again, even setting these boundaries, you're getting it to do the heavy lifting for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Still got to
Okay.
put it in place. Just getting it there for you.
And I suppose that's a good segue. I'm just going to recap because we're on to the last one, which is about monitoring for trust. And if you think about it, Kelly, what we've talked about so far is assess the risks. So identify the risks of implementing AI into your management systems, what, could potentially go wrong. So, and then you talked about actions to address those risks, which would include the boundary setting. Okay, so what are we using AI for? And then what's the next step? Okay, and then all of this leads to that final part, which is around monitoring for trust. So you can integrate AI into your quality management systems. You can put boundaries in place. You can implement your corrective actions and, as Kelly mentioned, controls, which could include training and support as well on how to use the tools. That's not the end of it. Yeah. Just like anything in your management system, there's this plan, do, check, act, continual improvement cycle. But this is where trust comes in as well. So you need to review, adapt, and keep all of the interested parties, stakeholders in the loop. See, well, how well is this working? So as we know, and we use this in our personal behaviors, Kelly, is that transparency, open, clear, transparent, that builds trust. Okay, so if the people that you're working with within your organization, within your, say, ISO management system, can see this open communication, that builds trust, as well as with your customers, though. Okay, so again, we'll use that Notebook LM example where we've just been open and transparent with, well, this is how this has been generated. So it does build that trust. And then, Kelly, you and I talked about, well, do we need to let our students know that those workbooks that we mark as humans are marked by humans? Okay, so they understand that it's not being generated with by AI, and we're not just plugging it into a system. So, that's really, actually, I think that's the example I used in the Lead the Standard article. So, yeah, as we mentioned, we had that student that thought that the workbook had been marked by AI, and it took a lot of convincing and an actual face-to-face Zoom call to convince him that, yeah, I had actually written everything. So in that instance, I was able to build trust. And I can't remember if it might have been the first workbook, Kelly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It was
so
the
it was
very first
workbook
one.
one. Yeah, so he still has four more to go. And so we had to, I suppose, go through different avenues or paths to build that trust because it had been broken initially. So we have to find what we need to do to build that trust. And it's all about continual learning, continual improvement as well. And this is what prompted me to write this, is that, oh, he doesn't trust us. This is not good for us as a business. We need to understand what's driving this, because it's completely new to us. We've never had this before.
No.
That, we know that we're human. We're all familiar with our processes, but it's impacting our students. We need to now be aware that they may not trust the tools that we're using.
I think the scary bit about that was that every argument he had, and sorry, it's both scary and frustrating part about this, was that every argument he had was legitimate.
Huh?
Though we were, like as I said, he, we are completely open that our AI chatbot on our website is an AI chatbot and it will put you through to a human. But how many chatbots do you go to websites that are Jenny
Yes.
from Sydney? And it's not
Yes.
Jenny from Sydney, it's Jenny from
Yes.
the server in whichever. And you get really frustrated with your fake responses. So
Yes.
that was one legitimate thing. I'll put you through to a person. Okay, well, Jenny from Sydney now becomes Joey from Melbourne. And you're still emailing, so you're just changing from chatbot to email. So that was a legitimate argument. And then when I did the recording and I was said had my face on the screen, I had his workbook, I was showing everything. He still believes that that was potentially AI generated video. Now that would
Yep.
I would be very impressed if he was able to pull that out. But again, we're seeing on the news all of the time all of these deep fakes.
Yep.
So again, knowing where he works, this is obviously an extreme level of exposure is probably the best way to put it.
Yep.
So he's seeing all of that stuff every day, whereas other people aren't.
Mm.
But
He knows it's possible.
exactly, he knows that's
Mm.
possible, and that made us start to think, well, hang on, if he's doing this, what else is there? So I think, yeah, being completely open, and I think we're going to get to that point where, yeah, this is AI versus this is human, is going to need to be a disclaimer, and we're probably going to be disclaiming this is human more often than this is AI, because AI is taking over in a lot of that content space. So yeah, I think by being, as you said, open, clear, and transparent, that is what builds the trust. But also make sure that you are being genuine and authentic in all of that as well. Um, so, like we've found here, we're even changing the way that we write things because the way that AI is adapting so much, it's starting like the language in and grammar and layout and things like that. That's got people questioning, well, hang on, that punctuation is different to that. Well,
Yep.
that word is used. So it, I think it's almost becoming a little bit more work in that testing phase to make sure that we're all being legitimate and authentic in that space.
Well, yeah,
That
there is
trust.
a separate topic. I was reading a Harvard Business Review article, and they call it work slop, which is
Works.
what you were talking, work slop. So people that over rely on AI,
Oh, yeah.
particularly to write things, it's causing more work on the other end.
Yeah.
So they're just pushing this stuff out that's actually not genuine. I don't know if you think you used a similar
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah, authentic, possibly you used. So then, it's getting the work done quickly, but the quality of it is not there. So they're calling that work slop.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, and that's what we're talking about. It's great to do the heavy lifting, but you still need someone that knows the topic and the content and the context to ensure that it's on the right track, and ask the challenging questions as well.
Mm. Yeah, you
Yeah.
need someone to mop up the slop.
Yes, exactly. That's the part that's missing. So,
Yeah.
did you want me to wrap it up now?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've touched on quite a few really important things to me.
Yeah. Okay. So, just to wrap it up and summarize what Kelly and I have covered today, we talked about obviously, the introduction of AI into our management systems and, some experiences that we've had recently around trust, which was sort of the whole catalyst to me writing this article in the first place. And we came up with the AIM pyramid. So assess, integrate, and monitor. So first step, assess the risk. So know where AI shows up in your system and what could actually go wrong. So from mistakes, or omissions even through to bias as well. So the next step then is integrate with boundaries. So this is sort of like implementing some controls around these risks that you've identified. So if you put boundaries in place, you can choose to use AI to support, as Kelly and I have said, do the heavy lifting. It's a tool to assist. Or there might be some instances where it can replace. Okay, and we use that example, if you get your customer complaints in, you could use AI to summarize it, but we need a real human to check for, which non-conformances are we raising. So in effect, possibly a human used to update all of the customer complaints and do a bit of a summary themselves. So in that example, that part of their job has been replaced. However, it's that review. Again, it's the heavy lifting, but look at that as boundaries. Okay, so be clear about what AI can do and what only humans should. It's not do, it's decide. It's more about that decision making. And then finally, it all ends up with monitoring for trust. So this sort of follows still that continual improvement cycle that we're all used to in our management systems. But throughout this process of assessing the risk and putting boundaries and other controls in place, you need to keep reviewing, being open, transparent, clear to build this trust. So you've got to communicate to the people you work with, communicate to your customers and clients and even other interested parties. So they know that the tools that you're using and the work that you're doing, they can rely on you. So as always, I'm going to hand it back to Kelly. But before I do that, just remember, anyone can follow the standard. We want you to be the one to lead the standard.
Thank you, Jackie. That is a wrap for another episode of Lead the Standard. Today we have been unpacking how AI is finding its way into your management systems, whether you meant it to or not, and how to stay ahead of those risks while still embracing the benefits. I don't know if anyone saw me pick up my pen and take a note as Jackie was recapping then, but I think it's really important to think of this as a bit of a triage system. Kind of get it to do the beginning steps for you and then tidy that up and work through. So said it's only as good as, I think we went, rubbish in and rubbish out. So think about that sort of side of things as well. It isn't the solution, it's a tool, and it does still rely on you. So yeah, make sure that you are using or training your team and your system, your AI tools effectively and efficiently, and applying those boundaries. And I think you'll find that your systems can be much more efficient, and you will learn some things along the way. So if you don't think you're using it, I promise you are. Jackie, thank you for taking us through that AIM pyramid, and for reminding us that trust in the systems doesn't come from the tech. It does come from how we use it and how we communicate that. People trust people. People don't trust tech. And I think that's really important too. So I'm going to leave it on that note. We will be back in a fortnight with a bit more conversation around whatever the next ISO related curveball might be. So make sure that you've tapped the follow button so you are first in line when that next episode drops. In the meantime, if this episode helped you or you know of anybody else that it may help, we'd love it if you shared it or left a quick review. It really does help other people to find the show and get on board. We'd also love your thoughts and experiences in the comment section as well. So please feel free to share with us. So until next time, do take care, stay curious, and keep leading the standard. Bye for now.
Bye.